Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. So I thought today we'd discuss the idea of conspiracies. I mean, we talk about them all the time, right? Why not talk about them as in a sort of third-person view? I think if you're a person who's ever believed in a conspiracy or you've uncovered one, it's just this really mysterious, bizarre experience that attaches to it. People's reactions to it. You know, first and foremost, it's bizarre that they even exist, right? You look up the word conspiracy in the dictionaries, and they typically say 2 or more people conspiring against 1 or more people. Well, there's a lot of formal organizations that do that every single day, right? Military does it in every single division. Marketing departments are purely that. A marketing department, I think started off as, we need to inform the people that there's a new product out here. And it turned into, well, there's so much competition now that we have to embellish our product and our marketing materials, not only inform, but embellish what it can do, which is essentially lying about why it's so much better. I think I was in my late teens or mid-teens even when I realized that the toothpaste that I used to brush with kept getting advertised as being more and more toothpaste. Oh my God. What could they have possibly done? Even if you believe the bullshit about fluoride. What, more fucking fluoride? Tell us a goddamn Xanny bar. Cereals. Oh my God, now it's just so much more fucking concentrated sugar to kill you. Conspiracies, they're absolutely a part of the world that we live in today. But it didn't used to always be that way. What's the opposite of a world that is full of conspiracies like the one we live in right now, exactly today? It'd be a world of human beings in this particular realm that are all completely honest. They have no idea what a lie is. Because that's the fundamental weave, the fundamental particle of conspiracy is lying. Now, for those who are chronic liars who hate getting caught being chronic liars because they really hate to think of themselves that way, what they will tell you is there are half-truths and there are things that are unsaid, and they basically split the hair of coveting information and operating in a covert manner so that they can look in the mirror and not slash their throat every morning. But what they are liars. Now, we have some areas where withholding information is something that we formalize in the form of entertainment. For any of you who've played a game of poker, that is the game. Even if you've played, we used to call it books when I was a kid, but, where I have to guess if you have the card that I have, and then I get to take it from you. Go Fish is, the more modern version of the name. It used to be called books. But that's a formalized technique of we are all coming together. We're going to use our powers of deduction and logic to figure out what each other have in terms of cards, and then we're going to become smarter as a result of this exercise, and we're going to be entertained. We'll be surprised. In a roundabout way, you might have a comedian who's going to go up on stage and do their shtick, right? Well, the comedian doesn't send you notes ahead of time and sit down and do sort of a panel discussion before they go up and tell you all the incredible ideas that they have developed and that they hold within themselves. No. We pay them to go on stage and orchestrate the reenactment of all the stories such that we are surprised and we laugh. So where did this stuff start, do you think? Right? Just rewind time and think about caveman getting clever. Have you ever surprised someone in your life and you didn't mean to? You just turned around the corner and you said, hey, and as soon as you said that someone's super concentrating on their computer and they jump. And serendipitously, you realize that you can surprise people. You weren't trying to be conniving. You weren't trying to be a jerk and scare people. It just happened, right? Well, now what if you're under threat? At least you think you are. And you want to sneak up to the information. Maybe it's across the street. There's this big brawl going on in your neighborhood, and you just want to peek out a window. You don't want them to notice you so that the shit doesn't come your way, but you want to peek. And so you reuse that technique that you found serendipitously as a child on this one. Take it to the next level. You now need to peek in on something in order to get the information you need to maybe do something. Maybe you're sort of technically the aggressor because the other person has no intent of doing anything wrong to anyone, but you're spying on them. It's those little tiny things in the brain, those little moments in time that manifest into other things, right? The more intelligent man got, and the more that they ran into these mechanisms of hiding something, sneaking up on someone, it just snowballed naturally in a very organic way. You know what's interesting is the squirrel runs off and hides his nuts, right? That is funny. Go ahead. That's just a natural thing. His little programming in his brain says, you know what? I need to build a little granary of these nuts because it's going to get crappy and I'm going to be hungry. And if I don't, I'm going to die. So naturally, man has the same exact sensibilities. You can hide your food. We eventually came up with granaries. We learned to dry out beef and accumulate. There's another fundamental principle to a conspiracy. There's been many, many shows on TV and movies that have a situation where everyone's out of food. And all but one person starts to look emaciated. But there's this one person that always seems to be okay, never seems to be hungry, and rarely complains about food or water because they have a stash somewhere. Now, back in the day, the way I view this is that, well, we were fairly primitive. Our intent was probably more primitive as well. But nowadays we have gigantic organizations. If you want to think about the military-industrial complex, for instance, it's very interesting. Now, let's say I'm sitting in my house here. I have whatever finite resources I have inside my house, a few resources outside the house, a hose. And you think, okay, what could he possibly do with all that stuff? And you've got a few things on your mind, If you have a computer, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can write a movie, you could make a website, you can make a video game, etc., etc. Now you know I'm limited by time. I'm only one dude. If we're going to keep this question, this hypothesis as pure as possible, right? But now when you get two people in the house, things become exponentially more amazing. What you can get done with two people in an equation is way more than just two people working by themselves, combining the efforts of two individuals. For some reason, there's an exponential explosion. It's not like 10x or anything, but it's more than just 1 + 1 = 2 in terms of resource pools, in my experience. But now imagine you come together as a gigantic city, which is the population of the military-industrial complex, right? Again, I think, was it Bart Sibrel said that the number of government employees, both federal and local, is 20 million. It's pretty good. It's less than 10% of our population, but damn, that's a lot of people. That's like all of Los Angeles with all the neighboring counties, right? All right. Now you pool all of those resources in terms of manpower and man hours and thought. And then you tax 350 million people to pay for what they're doing. So you have this easily an infinite amount of cash. Meaning the projects that you could greenlight and actually execute can't can't technically exceed the amount of money that you're going to gather on a yearly basis, because you get so much money into the military. It's not every penny, but you get a big giant allocation into the military, and you simply can't finish enough work units in 12 months to consume the amount of money you were just allocated for that 12 months. So that's huge. That's massive what you can do. The machine that gigantic, a machine made of human beings that make machines, that spend money. So I wanted to start off like that so we can sort of assess in our brains how organically these conspiracies actually come about, because they're not necessarily a devil that shows up and says, man shall be deceiving. Shit just happens. At best, it could be augmented by an outer force of darkness or something, but honestly, I think if you're really honest with your own soul, there'll be things that you've wanted in your life that you weren't allowed to have, and most of us can see that we're not going to get them, and we want to be good people at the end of the day, and so we gain strength to refuse our temptation. But kid next door doesn't have that restraint, and so he or she gets it. Now, in terms of the conspiracy groups online, it really divides into two groups. And very few people really think it through who have no association with these conspiracy groups. We know these people. We are these people, right? There's essentially two sides to the coin. You have the conspiracy theorists that do not want to believe that the conspiracy that they have uncovered is real, but they believe that they have seen irrefutable proof / a smoking gun, based on all the knowledge they have in their head, that cause and effect wise, this really looks like something they need to investigate, and they go down the rabbit hole. I think that's the larger percentage of the group. Then we have the conspiracy theorists who are bored to death and simply want something to excite themselves. Now, they too need to see something that will convince them that this one is a particular one that they should go down. But as we know, when you want to believe something strange, the veracity, the clarity and sharpness of the facts are no longer required as deeply as those who are trying to fight it off. Now that's the coin that is generally the two groups that get into conspiracies. And then you have the observer on the outside that doesn't have any association with either group. This group, I think, also has two sides. You have the group of people that just don't give a shit. They're like, yeah, whatever. My dad's one of these guys. I love it because he doesn't get himself stressed out at all. My dad's like the most relaxed guy on planet Earth. Yeah, whatever. I'm alive. Let's go on. Let's go see a movie. And honestly, if we didn't have conspiracies that I think relate to some really evil shit, I would take his attitude too. But unfortunately, there are things that I think need to be corrected. But the other side of the non-conspiratorial group is that we are crazy for ever thinking that anything is other than the information that we have been given by our authoritarian figures in our government, in our educational systems, perhaps in our religion. They're in the very first stage of the Kubler-Ross state, denial. And I think that all they do is they vacillate between the first two stages, right? So denial, anger, denial, anger, denial, anger. It is interesting. They might even go up to negotiation, but they'll never cross over into acceptance. It's really strange. But their theory, in many cases, is that the folks that are investigating the conspiracies actually want things to be true that are negative. For them, it has to do with the scapegoating theory. They believe that people who investigate conspiracies are angry at themselves, angry at their lives, and so we need someone or something to hate so that we can, look in the mirror, move on, distract ourselves from ourselves. I'm sure there's a bit of that in this world, right? So what else happens when You are one of the individuals who's doing the investigation. It's a real interesting phase when you're first taking on I shouldn't say taking on, it's the first steps of evaluating whether or not you are seeing anything out of the norm. You're in that group, but there are no conspiracies, or there's no conspiracies that really matter to you. And then someone describes something to you. You see something odd, doesn't make any sense to you. You can't reconcile it in your brain. And you just start looking at it weird, You start looking at it from different angles. You know that, well, if you get interested in this, it's going to consume part of your life. So deep down inside, you're trying to determine, does this really matter, right? Some people don't follow the moon missions because they just don't care. Like, whatever. I don't give a shit where we've been. I got a bill that's due. A lot of times you just have overgrown kids who are in their 50s and 60s who have thought their whole life that we did go to the moon, and so it was very important for them, and they'll defend it to the end of time. But there's this beautiful thing. If you're a person who is sort of an entrepreneurial person, or you're a person that usually has projects in your life, there's that, what I call the Fun 40 when I teach my students. The Fun 40 of when you're contemplating a project, you haven't started, you're in dream state. It could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that, and it's just exciting as hell. And if you've ever gone down a rabbit hole in your life, it doesn't have to be a conspiratorial rabbit hole, but you've investigated something. You did a master's thesis or a PhD thesis, and you really got into this. You wrote an essay at some point in your life, and it was very exhilarating for you. The next time you have this opportunity, it's something you'll pay attention to. And you'll get embedded in it. You will have a whole process to onboard a new conspiracy. You'll have rules. Well, if it belongs to this, if it comes from that person, if Dr. Stephen Greer says anything about it being valid, then I'm not going to listen to it, or David Icke, or Alex Jones, or whatever. And I'm not criticizing your method. Stick to your gut, right? The universe has something very interesting that I think if a lie algorithm goes through your body, somehow the swirl of pure truth, which is you, mixing with a contradictory algorithm of non-existence, which is a lie, it makes you feel strange in your gut. And that's what's telling you, don't do that. But the next phase is you onboarding this conspiracy. You have seen enough. You're using your faculties in your mind, your entire life's experience and life book of experience and knowledge and science and history or whatever. And you have made the decision to go ahead and move into it, right? And you're into it and you're finding things interesting. And if it's one of your first times, of course, there's that naive moment when you want to share it with your family and friends because you believe that what made you tick, what made this interesting to you, is what's going to make that interesting to them. And it never works like that, does it? I mean, sometimes you can have your kindred souls. I say you find more people like that in a smoke lounge than you find in your own house. It's so strange. You will live with people, you'll be related to people, know them your whole life, you'll have had a million conversations with them, and you bring them a conspiracy, and you seem like you're the most incompatible two human beings on planet Earth. And then you go to a smoke lounge, sit down with a total stranger, go, motherfucker. And they go, what's the deal? I just fucking argue with my old lady about chemtrails or something like that. And they're like, oh yeah, those chemtrails? Yeah, totally. Boom. There's your conversation. There's your ability to expand your mind and go more in depth. There's your ability to meet a commercial pilot who's literally at the lounge because he's got a 2-day layover, a 1-day layover, and he's just hankering for a cigar. I'll tell you as a related digression, for those of you who have discovered, well, how do I say this in the right chronological order? One thing you will discover if you get into conspiracies is the sheer synchronicity of this universe. The minor example is someone teaches you the word ubiquitous. And all of a sudden you start hearing the word ubiquitous everywhere. Now there's one theory that because that's a very bizarre sounding word, that you didn't know that you were hearing it until you knew how to distinguish those syllables, right, into the word, and then you started to understand that is not a slur, that is not a bizarre mumbling, that is actually a word and it has a meaning. But there's a lot of things that don't have that distinction that you will learn, and then all of a sudden you see it everywhere, you hear it everywhere. When you get into conspiracies of any kind, the amount of times you will be led to those who can confirm or deny what you believe, it goes off the charts. There was one factoid that I keep meaning to mention and put into context as this jet flies over. When I was a kid in the 80s, I'm totally a NASA-holic. Oh my God, my room has the cutaway picture of the space shuttle, which a bunch of you guys had in your house. Hopefully some of you girls had it too. And my aunt's close friend from, I guess, high school, she was from Colorado. She's a non-blood related aunt. But she had a friend that would come and visit us in our little tiny town in Kansas, middle of nowhere. And her friend worked for NASA and worked specifically on the space shuttle program. And the interesting thing is that she made it a point to tell my aunt, okay, she was like a really fun-loving woman too, just as carefree as you could possibly be, not one of these anal retentive scientist types. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but there's just women that out there that are just really, I don't know, just fun-loving, carefree. They're super brilliant, so they know everything that's going on in the room at all times. They know how everyone feels in the room. It's one of those ladies. This is my aunt's friend. But she made it a point to tell my aunt, I am at a level of security, high clearance security, that you and I really can't talk about my job. And I don't remember what year it was, probably 84, 85, somewhere in there. And I remember thinking to myself, what's so goddamn covert about the space shuttle? It's been launching for years now. I got a picture of the damn thing on my wall, all cut out so I could see where all the environmental systems are and all this other stuff. I'm fully inspired by this project, right? And now that we look back, we're thinking it's the payload. For those of us that believe maybe some astronauts survived some explosions, perhaps there have never been astronauts in there, or whoever's in there is not them, etc., etc. But there goes the synchronicity of my association with the NASA program. One, I was a NASA-holic, right? I worshipped all of the information I got. Again, my godfather used to send me NASA ice cream and patches and stuff. I watched the space shuttle take off. I got to see it land later in life. I bump into two guys that work for NASA that say we didn't go to the moon. They explain the science to me of it. I just so happen to have the science background to understand what they're saying. 10 years later, Bart Sibrel makes a movie. I met two people from NASA outside of the other two guys who called me a bunch of names across the table very passive-aggressively, and then eventually said, yeah, you're right. I met a guy that worked for Teller at a local burger joint down the street. Got a little Masonic ring on his pinky. Told me all kinds of crazy shit. It just goes on and on and on. I met a guy that sold a machine to NASA that builds moon terrains. They purchased it off of him in 1964 as his college installation project. It goes on and on and on. There's some of you that believe this is a simulation. I'm with you. I don't think it's necessarily in the bowels of a computer, but whatever, who cares? But I'll give you an example that happened a couple days ago. I had a friend of mine call me up in a panic. They had a major deadline, and their keyboard would not work on their computers, a Macintosh iMac computer. And this thing has always had this problem. I, at a previous date, had swapped out the keyboard for one that works. Still didn't work. So it's the port on the computer. But there's 3 USB ports on the back of a Mac. And so you should think, okay, if one of the ports is injured, move to the next port. Don't use that port. All 3 of them have the exact same problem. Again, it's not the keyboard. It's something inside the bowels of the computer. Some little ID thing. Now, I have watched this person fix this themselves within 30 seconds, I don't know, a dozen times live. And now they can't get it to work. And so I'm sitting on the phone. I said, because we went on for like 5 minutes on the phone. I'm thinking of everything in the book, shaking the wire, blah, blah, blah. And I know I'm defeating my own logic because I know it's something inside the computer. So here's a magic moment for you. It's kind of unrelated to this particular overall theme of the episode, but you'll get a kick out of this. I said, do you remember last time I was there and this happened? Yep. Do you remember how fast you fixed it? And how much you didn't give a crap about it not working? Yeah. I said, let's go back to that moment. Remember me? I was in front of your computer, trying to log in, trying to type. You reached up behind the back of the computer, and you smiled, and you were laughing, and you said, you just got to do this. And he said, well, I've been doing that. And I said, well, just do it again, but I want you to remember it working last time we did it together. All right. Pause 10 seconds, if even that. Oh my God, it's working. I said, yeah. You went back to the moment it worked, which is the reality that you manifested just now. When you were in a panic about your project being due and the computer not working, the computer locks up is the problem. And so when it restarts, it has this problem every single time. But you just let it work. And the person's completely stunned on the other side of the phone that it was just that easy to change their opinion about the computer and about the moment to make it work. When you are inside the conspiracy bubble, the universe will gift you with answers. It will gift you with Gnostic answers, meaning it will simply tell you things that are completely true, and then you can go out and research it, and you can find the truth. But it will also introduce you to people that can provide a lot more insight. I had a moment in my conspiratorial run of history of this last century, the 20th century, where I don't remember where I was, what time of day it was, but I got a full epiphany, like I know Kung Fu dump, about the entire century that explained every decade. Like QAnon says, there are no such thing as coincidences at these levels. Connected all the dots all the way up. And it was like a gestalt. Bam! I totally got it all, right? And it was about the financial destruction of America. And so for me, I'm the kind of guy that when I get it in this particular way, I know that it is true most of the time. Like I can be as cynical as I want to be, but I'll always find out it was right in the end. It's really strange. And I know that might sound ignorantly arrogant and very dangerous for a human being to believe that way. Trust me. I don't ever walk up and just put a padlock on it and go, I don't need to do any research. This is completely true. In this particular case, the beauty of it was that someone had essentially given me a painting of the entire century that had numbers on it, right? Color by numbers. But I needed to do the research to paint it in. And it took about 10 years. 5 good years to get most of the painting completely complete. It took another 5 years after that to further reinforce and prove that these hunches were absolutely correct down to the penny, down to the dime, down to the political event. And I've covered it on previous episodes, but it's about the fact that there was a cabal in our country that still exists called Skull and Bones. Obviously, you have the money changers in Europe controlling that group and their cabal through Philander Knox to get the 16th Amendment passed, to turn on the IRS, to turn on the Federal Reserve, and then to get us into wars to borrow against this new money-making technique. Then the Depression, then World War II, then the baby boomer era, then the Korean War, then the nuclear scare, then the Vietnam. Then we get this 15 year reprieve where the world is probably as good as it's been since it was created. And then we go into the 90s where everything is dismantled. Once you dive in and you're committed and you start getting results, the next tier of evolution starts to occur in your life, where you start to experience something you've never experienced in your life. The stage goes something like this. Up to this point of conspiracy, you have been a conformist. You have completely followed all the rules since you were a child, and you've been benefited by those rules, hopefully. Got a decent education. You had some fun. You found some love. Found some challenge, found some reward, etc., etc. And then you get into a conspiracy, and you're using your mind. And the more intelligent you are, the more your conviction to believe what you have deduced comes into effect, meaning you're able to discern things. You're able to look at a particular opinion from all kinds of different angles and go, Jesus, it really is that, right? If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? But you will share this with a loved one. And the sharing is actually very interesting because you might share it with someone who's your age, your peers, or you might risk sharing it with someone who's an elder, a parent, someone who's simply older. And we have a nice Pavlovian relationship with our elders in most cases, if you're at least my age, where you typically will, up to that point, have a great respect for their knowledge. And you may have people in your life who never, ever waver from this opinion in your mind. I hope that's the case. But they will surprise you in one of two ways. They will surprise you that they know everything about this conspiracy, and they've been waiting their entire lives for you to get to their level. And you mentioned JFK, which is before your time if you're my age. And they go, you give them your theories that you've discovered. Well, have you ever heard the theory about the guy who was driving the car that shot him, or the grassy knoll, or the kid in the rain drain? And they look and they listen. And they start grinning. They say, well, let me tell you about something that was well known back in that time that's no longer talked about, that's not in any of the information you seem to have consumed. And they go, dot, 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 dot. And you learn a whole another dimension to the game. Sometimes they're things you've already explored and they're hanging on to old theories. Like anyone hanging on to the grassy knoll is hanging on to a false theory. They love the grassy knoll theory because it is the wrong location of the gunman. And as long as you hang on to the grassy knoll, you'll never find out who the gunman is. Now, the second type of person you'll run into is someone who's utterly stunned and appalled that their relative, their friend, is one of these people that does not believe what the authoritative captors of our society have told them is true. They don't want to be around anyone that's going to shake up the boat. And they certainly do not want, out of pure cowardice, to realize that what they have believed their entire lives may not be 1,000% correct. I mean, the outcome's the same in terms of JFK. He was murdered. We're all splitting hairs about who did it. There was a crime committed, and whoever did it got away. That's official story. Well, actually, it's not, because they say Lee Harvey Oswald did it. But if you take it one level past Lee Harvey Oswald, okay, there's bullets going everywhere. The windshield took a shot. The rim around the windshield took a shot. Curbs got shot. More than one person got shot in the car. The magic bullet, right? But some people grow up with a level of confidence that regardless of how crazy the world is, that they're really not in any threat, just simply reviewing the facts, right? I'm sitting in a backyard in Huntington Beach, California. Am I really worried about someone knocking on my door and giving a crap that maybe I've uncovered something about the JFK assassination by merely looking at YouTube and reading official stories and doing deductions and stuff? Nah. The right theory has most likely been told 1,000 times, regardless if we know what the right theory is. It goes around in circles. Let's say there's 20 theories about how it exactly went down. Guarantee you one of them's right. And it gets spoken all the time on the internet. Maybe even one guy obsesses on it, makes a bunch of videos on it. They don't care. Nobody's listening. The guy's got 50 subscribers. Nobody cares. They censor your videos anyway, right? But for a lot of us, it'll be the very first time that people that we admire have ever had anything against us in verbal communication. They have never called us crazy. We've never been called crazy. But now it's happening. And now, since you revealed yourself, right, God forbid, every time you see them, they look at you and they're kind of like, that's the guy that believes all that crazy shit. It's sad, right? So now you have to deal with this. You have this tumultuous little stress bubble in your chest of like, son of a bitch. I worked really, really hard to come up with this information, and I really did a good job, in your opinion, of course, discerning truth from fact, logic from impossibility. You have, if you've taken any information from an average citizen in the world from their videos, you've done a really impeccable job checking out their background, checking out, where they've been right in the past, etc., etc. But you're the one burdened with the final product. The coward simply runs away. Those who did it, well, they're just moving on with life, right? Yeah, sure. Now, what I think you'll find is the following. When you get into this practice of discovering that there are groups that covet, that hide, that form secret societies, secret corporations, outward corporations that have secret agendas, etc., etc., you will most definitely learn about very specific elements of how the world is put together. But what happens as a greater value to the overall equation is that you will begin to discover the overall practice of the entire planet. You'll begin to sort of separate, the oil from the water. The further you go, you will become more aware that they're centralized, that they're in banking, that they're in major corporations. If you're an entrepreneur, you will realize that they always have infinite money to develop crap on yesterday's technology, and you can never get a dime for creating the next revolutionary thing unless it can be co-opted to harm society or something to that effect, make wars easier, which is always harming society in the end. But how do conspiracies start within respect to our souls? In my experience, they happen externally to my soul. Oh, we faked the moon mission? Really? Well, keep going. I'm listening. I got a pretty good science background. Let's go. I know the official story of how we supposedly got there, so tell me how, undo every single official fact of how it was done so that I can believe you. And you listen. Maybe it takes you 20, 30 years like me. It took me 15 years to hear it once and to hear it twice, and I was like, oh my God, you're right. Holy shit. And then it starts to crawl inside your soul. Depending on the intensity of the conspiracy, on the darkness of it, how many people were hurt, how many people are still being deceived by it today. And that's when it goes to the second level in your soul. You're thinking, okay, do I really need to pursue conspiracies? I mean, it's not making me that much, not making me that popular in my family circles, maybe even some of your friends' circles, maybe your intimate partners don't like it. And you have to make that decision, that moral decision. Is this something you're going to devote your life to? A lot of us do make that decision. And it's a tough decision. Because you could go down the official road in life, and life will become, it stays artificial, it stays superficial, and you get along with more people. What I think you will discover very quickly, if you hadn't already discovered before you got down this regiment, is that those are not really the people you want to spend a lot of time with. You may want to spend some time with them, right? If your parents never believe anything that you say, obviously we're not talking about cutting them out of the game simply because they don't believe everything you believe. And so you have to make that decision, a commitment. And it's a tough one. And it's one that you will renegotiate often. Do I still want to hang on to this? Do I still want to hang on to this? When you have a child, it starts to galvanize away from others and goes straight to your child. All right. I want my kid to live in the world as close to the world that I lived in when I was young, which is the American dream exists. If you set your mind to it, you can get what you want. And so you become your own sacrificial lamb. Doesn't matter if anyone agrees with me. It doesn't even matter if your kid agrees with you. How many of you are following the world's events right now? Especially a QAnon thread. I'm not sure about this guy, but, he kind of hangs in there for predicting the truth. He's predicted some things that haven't happened. We're going to go after that probably in a different episode here, but if that guy is 100% real, then the way that the world is being cleaned up is very, very important. Pedophiles are being cleaned up. Human trafficking people are being cleaned up. The folks that start wars from three-letter alphabet agencies, they are being cleaned up. Hopefully at some point, a bunch of handcuffs find wrists to go around. Hopefully some empty prisons in Cuba hit maximum occupancy with these individuals. And then the whole world will get better. Hopefully it becomes a trend to expose such things in all countries. We just have a new standard, right? And I'll point you to the moment in history where America formed. Yes, we were formed out of Masons. If you ask a Mason what their whole goal is, their fundamental goal is to fear God and be good to humanity. We know that they've been involved with things that haven't had such outcomes, but that's the overall charter at the bottom level. A first-degree person will chant that to you from their lodge. But what happened when America started? And we never had a king. We never had a queen. Europe slowly stopped having their countries run by, at least on the outer layer, run by the kings and queens. Now, a lot of us believe they still do run the show over there, but at least the people think, for a few hundred years that they weren't being run by monarchs. We know that some bankers took the monarchs for everything that they had, so Germany lost control, England lost control for at least a little while. I have to assume everyone else lost control too, to the bankers. And so if America, through its incredible dominance over itself, unfortunately with the violation of the Fourth Amendment being eavesdropping, we're able to legally incarcerate these people who've been destroying the world for the last several thousand years, undoing what the bankers were able to accomplish starting back in the 1700s. Now, when you ask a doctor about a problem with your body, a doctor is always looking for the systemic cause. If someone says, I'm having panic attacks or something, or whatever it is, they want to go and find what it is in your life that is the systemic cause of that problem, because they know that's what's at the root, literally, of what's making you uncomfortable. If QAnon is real, for instance, then they're going after the systemic cause of the world's problems. And then it doesn't matter how many thousands of conspiracies are hiding in every corner and every shadow on planet Earth. You disable their income, you disable their power structure, you start to arrest them and break off the communication, and whatever's left, you hunt them down and you kill them. Literally. And then the world takes a big, deep, clean air, clean water breath. And we've bought ourselves some time. Now, there's two things that I think would have to happen. I'm just going to start kind of riffing at the end of this episode here, because I think if you made it this far, you're interested in this subject, in these sort of observations, right? I said a long time ago in season 1 that the most dangerous thing you can do is let other people tell you when you've won. The example I cite is the coup of Russia, the fall of the USSR. And no one would argue that the fall of the USSR was a good thing for them, getting rid of communist rule. The problem is they got had the second that they agreed with the, I guess, AP Reuters and some of the pundits of the world that they had won. How did they win? What was the pivotal moment where they said, oh yeah, we're totally winning? It's when Boris Yeltsin got on the back of a car with a bullhorn and started screaming about independence and how they had won. He was the selected leader after Gorbachev. Gorbachev just inherited the USSR as is. He didn't do anything pro or against. He just simply kept it going, which is sort of was against the people. But after Boris Yeltsin was deemed the victor and was elected as the president of Russia, I believe it is under his watch that the population reduced about 30 million due to suffering and poverty. Now, it wasn't that they weren't suffering before that, but it's astounding that in a capitalistic bubble of the 10 years that he was president, roughly, from 1991 to about 1999 when he resigned, they went into debt, they lost all of their mineral rights. It was horrible. So it's important that if we ever get a revolution to occur in any way, shape, or form, obviously we're doing a gunless revolution now, and that's wonderful. That's why we want to keep it globally. According to QAnon, that's not exactly as pure as that. There are people fighting and dying right now underneath the hood. We can't let them tell us when we have won. We must make a pact with ourselves that says this has to occur before we consider ourselves completely reset. And that's going to be tough. You know, the broad strokes are pretty simple. Let's get rid of pedophiles. Easy. Everyone agrees to that. Human traffickers. People who are connected to banking, running countries. The money itself has to be reformed, which is going to be very painful and very terrifying for a little while. Hopefully those responsible have got a clean way to pull the Band-Aid off, and most of the pain that we feel is merely psychological trauma and not physical trauma. Being broke, being hungry. But one of the saddest realizations about things like the Depression in America was that you have, like my grandparents were very young, and they toiled through it, but they were young and they had energy to be dynamic and change jobs, and they were young, so they were appealing to various employers, right? My grandmother worked at a department store in Washington State for a little while. But she was young and she was beautiful, so they see her and they're like, you're smart, you're a teacher by training, and I know that you're going to understand how to sell the products that we have. But now imagine you were 85. It's 1935. We're at the absolute apex of the Depression. People are standing in line in New York City to get food. They have no jobs. They're selling pencils and apples. And they die inside the Depression. The last thing they see is the world coming to an end. That's scary, right? We don't want that to occur. And so we've got to be diligent about what is victory. But let's say it comes down to the fact that it's like, okay, we got rid of 99% of all pedophilia in the world, all these scumbags, right? NAMBLA is shut down. Everyone's handcuffed. Everyone's shipped away. Some people get the death penalty because of the things that they've done to children. All right. But now we've got to get to the systemic problem of that crisis. Because getting rid of all the people that got into it, well, that does really help, but what's making them pedophiles? It's probably a combination of a ton of stuff. I don't actually know exactly, but I would say that just as a layman looking in, I would say it stems back to that absolute power corrupts absolute. You know, I'm going to, use a Trumpism here. When he was admitting on that bus to the brother of the president, I think it's a brother, maybe it's a cousin, shit, I don't know, the Bush guy, that women allow him to grab them in the pussy because he's so powerful, and they just want to be touched by someone powerful. It seems like he's talking in a consenting way, right? We certainly haven't had any lawsuits against him about pussy grabbing. Believe me, if there was one out there, the Democrats would use it, right? But let's think about this. People who are capable of being leaders, especially in a healthy society, they're not going to be Nancy Pelosi's, right? Well, they'll have an imagination, desires, things that they've never been able to take advantage of because no one would ever let them. But now they get some power because we've redesigned the world and everyone's extremely happy. Maybe even that happiness facilitates the growth of things that are probably not good for us. And all of a sudden there's a lot of pussy grabbing, right? And the women are like, yeah, the world's great. Yeah, you can touch me. I don't care. Blah, 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 blah. And then you kind of get tired of that one, right? And like I've said in many episodes, you move up. So we got to be careful about how power facilitates fantasy into reality, because that shit can get corrupt extremely quickly. I think that any sentient human being on planet Earth fears that the absolute proliferation of pornographic material online that, 20 years ago used to cost you $30 to $50 a month to see it, it's all free now. It's all 100% free. So your little 8-year-old boy on a cell phone can just dial it up. Boom, it's right there. All you gotta do is turn off the filter, let me see all the horrible shit in the world, right? But what about your 8-year-old daughter? Systemic problems. So then you're sitting there with this moral dilemma. You're like, oh my God, we do have freedom of speech. Don't want to get rid of that because that's real important, but we do have pornographic material online. You look at back on America, I can't speak for other countries, and you think, well, all right, when was America really thriving, really productive? When did we have chivalry and courtship? Well, probably last time we really had it in full force was the 50s. That's 70 years ago, folks. They didn't have porn like we have it today. Yeah, we know that since the camera started rolling, one of the first things ever filmed was a porn, So you can have a lot of natural desire for sex without cameras, and you can have perversion without cameras. But we know that one of the ways that we create this sort of psychological explosion of total perversion that goes way beyond the law into these sectors is to have it readily available to everyone, such that the creep down the street can talk to your children, indoctrinate them. How many of you have ever heard about the deeds of the devil worshippers of the world, the Luciferians, the Satanists, and you can't conceive of how they ever got to a point where murdering a child and consuming them ever became something that was acceptable to human beings? I mean, geez, it's so far beyond just the sexual perversion of pedophilia. I mean, pedophilia is usually inconceivable to most normal human beings. You can conceive of what it is in your brain as a definition, but you certainly can't get behind why anyone would do it. And that for you is the threshold of absolute conscious, conception. And then you take it to the next level of these Satan worshipers, and you're like, my God, that took impossible and multiplied it times infinity. And yet some people got past that and made that the norm, made that okay. Young people, right? This Allison Mack girl turned to QAnon. Some pretty public people have done this stuff, right? How do we engage in that correction? How do we itemize what would need to be corrected in any case? How do we debate it? Do we turn it off and then study it? Do we study it without turning it off? Do we run the risk of getting more people involved with it by discussing it with it still being available? What if there's a committee created in the United States government, and it's some committee on, pornographic material as it relates to these pedophiles and these Satanists that managed to get to a point of insanity as normality. And then people read the news and they're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about, what is pedophilia? Oh yeah, little kids. Oh, that's horrible. But let me go look that up online. Blah, 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 blah. And you take a bunch of innocent people that would never be in it, and now they're exposed to it. What if it's a young person? But I'll take every single category I've ever outlined in this particular episode, and take all these matters that probably need to be evaluated, and take every side of every coin I've ever mentioned in this episode and apply it to these solutions that we need to come up with, these areas we need to analyze. It's a tough one. We know these things have to get solved. We want to maintain our freedoms. But think about it. How many times do you sit around at work in a normal setting with men and women, and you have an intelligent conversation about pornography? Never. Because that's a workplace. There's laws against even mentioning physical attraction to your fellow worker, right? There's this huge Me Too thing out there, and it's got some very real things that should be acknowledged. People have been harassed horribly, right? Been sexually assaulted. But then you have this, like Tom Brokaw is a very interesting one to me. He may be guilty, I don't know. But think about a guy like Tom Brokaw, or someone who's like a single guy like Conan O'Brien, or let's say that Johnny Carson remained single his whole life. These guys live at their studios. They go home to sleep. They wake up with, faxes back in the day on their desk about what the show's going to be about. They grab that. They take, they read it with the coffee and the newspaper. They go inside. They start producing at 6 or 7 in the morning. By 6 o'clock that night, the show's on, being recorded, or whenever they're recording, middle of the afternoon, whatever. Then they go into the break room and they find out what's set up for the next day. Get a kind of a preview. And this thing repeats, and they never get a chance to go home and just be normal, to go out on a vacation. They can't go on normal vacations because they're too popular. But they need some level of companionship, even in that chaos. And so, where's the natural place to find people when you're working 24/7? It's at work. And so you have to find a method to look around and go, well, who else is single in my work circle that's interested in me, or would be interested in me if they met me, and I want to approach them. Okay, but let's just say that person has an ego, and some of these guys have been working since they were in their early 20s, and now they're in their 70s. And let's say at 50, 59, they decide they really want a partner again. And their ego makes them think they can date a 28-year-old. Right? And so they approach the 28-year-old. They make a pass at them. Maybe it's even completely acceptable the way that they're doing it. Would you like to go out to dinner and da-da-da-da? Maybe even the person agrees because they're like, oh, maybe it's a business-related dinner. And they find out it's more of a romantic courtship. Now they're just grossed out. Oh my God, this guy was coming on to me, and we went to dinner. I felt very uncomfortable the second I realized it wasn't a professional engagement, it's a personal engagement, and Jesus. And let's just say the ego continues, and they continue. The guy is 59 and goes, yeah, I know she doesn't want it, but she does want it in the end, so I'm going to continue this pursuing. The funny thing is that I think it was my grandparents on my dad's side. My grandfather was just 2 years older than my grandmother. I think he had to ask her several times to marry him. And eventually said yes, and they lived happily ever after. Okay. Just say someone like Tom Brokaw has had that experience in an organic way back in his 20s, and he was married for 20 years, and he gets divorced, and he thinks that girls say no sometimes, but they don't really mean it, because he's had an experience where he heard no several times, and it turned into one of the best marriages of his entire life. I'm making all this up, okay? It's nothing to do with him personally. So you continue pursuing, and it turns into a Me Too moment. The dude should have backed off, right? He should have taken no for no, because no changes. The definition of no changes between individuals. Doesn't matter exactly what era you're in, but today it really does mean no in most cases, right? We're all taught and trained to think everyone is a pervert. It's crazy. When I was a young man, if you were, say, walking during broad daylight, you park your car at some department store and you need to go into the mall, if there was a woman in front of you, just because she chronologically got ahead of you, and you're walking behind her, she can hear your steps, there wasn't a lot of trauma with that. It was like I have a young man behind me, and if anything, maybe I'm more safe because if something happens to me, there'll be someone to witness it, and no one's going to jump me. Today, it's not like that. Today, you can walk behind someone broad daylight with even more people around, and these people will be taught to think it's spooky. We're afraid of each other because the world has become figuratively a dark place, right? I would wager, even though it's probably not popular to say, that pornographic material online has perverted our young minds. Guys, watch these people that are coked out of their fucking minds in these videos, right? Thinking that these people actually want this, or that the entire sex that you're looking at, the females, the males, they want these things, which are absolutely beyond any normal desires of the average human being. And so they could be following someone, and they could think, oh man, she looks like that porn star I've got in that loop on my computer, and boy, if I just do this thing, she wants it. The dude's totally wrong. She's never even seen a porn in her life. Perhaps she's in a committed relationship. Maybe she's even gay. She doesn't even like guys. But you can't convince some of these people that they're not desired as it is portrayed in fictional porn. We got problems to solve, people. And getting on the same page is very important. So let me button up this episode with this concept. The QAnon phenomenon online, which is not being reported by any mass media, it's not being reported by, Stefan Molyneux in Canada, it's not being reported on by Alex Jones, which really concerns me. You don't have to believe everything that he says. You should be reporting about him because he's a phenomenon of the truth movement. To ignore him is simply irresponsible, in my opinion, and really calls into question either that person's judgment of what is truly news, or it shows a bias that could be related to a shill. And I hate using that word, but someone who is either self-imposing themselves as regulating the truth to a degree that's absurd, because when you have, 100 videos come out after every single QAnon post online, that's something you should cover. But if that dude is real, and we are looking at the most miraculous year of American history since its foundation, to expose the evil and to undo all these organizations that have cabaled to take over the government. Hopefully the ones that are next in line to run the show aren't equally bad in different ways, right? It's hard for me to believe that the military-industrial complex wants to continue creating all kinds of weaponry and they don't want to use it. That's one of the problems with it all going back to the military. But for now, they're the age of reason, which is fucking insane all by itself, right? As I mentioned in my special report, the QAnon moment, which may or may not be live at this point when you see this video, if QAnon is a total bust, I'm erasing all that shit. And I will leave an episode about the phenomenon that he was a lie, that he was a live-action role-playing exercise. I'm right there. If he's that, trust me. But if he's not fake, then we have a very opportune moment for any of you that have been losing out in life due to being a person who has sought truth. You have, and we have, and I have, an opportunity to unify more minds at once into the fact that the world is run by conspiracies, the world is run by corruption of power, that money is a weapon, that wars cannot be waged if countries can't finance them. And we, I think, need to be prepared for that shift in thinking. We need to be mature about it. We need to refrain from being arrogant. We do not need to be I told you so's, although I will tell you that even my own soul has reveled in the simulation in my mind of certain individuals that I know that have been very callous in their inability to open their mind to other ideas. And if this were ever to happen, like the second that Hillary Clinton were to get arrested and get full charges for everything that we know that she's been involved in, Even remove the conspiracies about kids and stuff. There'll be people that go to their grave thinking that an innocent woman was incarcerated. I'm going to breathe deeply between now and then, right? But it's an opportunity of a lifetime, of the lifetime of the planet, to get something corrected. I want you guys to think about the tough stuff. How do we regulate systemic problems that are protected by the First Amendment without losing our First Amendment? We're very free in this world, but again, we have this common law thread that says do no harm. If we scientifically prove that perversion is a exponential snowball that rolls downhill, that once your dopamine learns a particular pattern of stimulation, it subtracts it from the equation such that you can take acid once and have the most incredible euphoric trip, and you'll meet God and you'll see love and all those amazing things. But if you took it every single day, within 3 weeks, you will no longer have any more trips, because your brain has been educated to what that does, and it is miraculously designed to maintain sanity, and it will erase its effect. You will have nothing happen to you. Same thing happens with perversion. What was great for your perversion and your taboo, well, it just neutralizes that, and you go to the next level, and it's new, and it stimulates you, and then you have to go the next. You have to. People who say that marijuana isn't a gateway drug, I could prove in a court of law it's a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug to every other drug on planet Earth, because at one point you want more. You want more of a stimulation. We can take you to a certain high. You do it every single day. That high goes down, down, down. You're going to smoke more and more and more. And eventually, it's not quite like acid where it does nothing to you, but it will do very little to you. And so you want something else. You get excited about pursuing, hallucinogenics and really bad shit. Cocaine eventually, maybe heroin. The amount of people in my personal life, I've had 2 extremely close friends of mine lose their entire lives to weed. And you know what? They never did anything else. Just weed. And they lost everything. And when I found them, both of these individuals, males, were on top of the world. On top of the world. Now, I have one friend in the entire world who is the third person, who's so absolutely brilliant. And I mean, I don't agree with his politics, so we have easy things that we disagree about, but his academic brilliance, especially in the area of computer programming and now electronics and robotics, he, I believe, smokes a little bit every day, and that helps him settle his mind to get into his algorithms. It's like Adderall for him. But he is the only person that I've ever known. I know another person that I actually partnered with that, in fact, I have a couple people I've partnered with over the 30 years of my professional career that smoked weed and just kept professing how it is their rock. And they lost their opportunities with me due in part, one 100% due to it, and the other one in part to weed. So we have to scientifically get behind harm and figure out what it is, right? If you're dying of cancer, and if there is any medicinal value of weed to cancer, well, that's a different game, right? That's not just a recreational thing. That is killing cancer cells in particular THC. I have heard that several times, hemp oil being one of the very prescribed techniques, but I haven't experienced it personally. The people that I've helped get out of cancer have never used marijuana, so I don't have any personal case studies. Hey, it might work, and that's a different game. Again, that's medicine. But at that point, you can take derivatives that have no mechanism to get you high. I know you feel me. Let me know your thoughts on this entire episode, just where you've dealt with the archetypes I've described, how you solve them, how you deal with them on a daily basis. And I don't get a lot of comments from you guys about sort of this, how are we going to take care of the immediate future if X happens or Y happens? Why don't you guys take a little time out and let me know what you think. If you're a QAnon follower, let me know what you think about the QAnon moment. I had a lot of great comments on that episode, but I think I really lacked people getting terribly deep into how we're going to handle this. We have to start planning now. We have to define what winning really means for us, instead of allowing it to be dictated to us, because as long as we're waiting for people to dictate it to us, then we're not in control of our own minds and our own destinies. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. There's audio, video, a locked Facebook group, and Patreon. Patreon gets you previews to these episodes 2 to 3 days ahead of time. Make sure you click the bell in Patreon so you get notices. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.